evening, everyone. Okay, again, good evening, everyone. We will be having our lecture on vitamins and minerals. For now, we'll only tackle the water-soluble vitamins, and then on our next meeting, it will be the fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. Okay, now, the objective of this lecture, the following. First, to define and classify the vitamins, to know the indications of giving vitamins, to discuss the pharmacokinetics of vitamins, to discuss the physiologic functions, treatment, uses, and sources of the different vitamins. Okay. But before anything else, we will review what a diet is, okay? Because these are the sources of vitamins that we take, aside from, of course, vitamin D, which can be taken from sunlight, okay? Now, what is a diet? It is the source of nutrients of human being. It is divided into the following. We have the energy yielding dietary components. And what are these energy yielding dietary components? We have the carbohydrates, essential and non-essential amino acids. You have to review what are the essential amino acids. We have the mnemonics for that. What is that? Private team hall, okay, no? We have that. Okay, take note of that because this is just a review of your basic knowledge, okay? We also have the unsaturated fatty acids, the minerals, of course, and the vitamins, which will be our topic for tonight. Okay, for the vitamins, what are vitamins? These are organic compounds required for nutrition of mammals. It is provided in small quantities from environment. Small quantities, that is why they are called micronutrients. Because should they be provided from the environment? First, because they can't be synthesized by the body, but they can be synthesized de novo. The rate of synthesis is not adequate. And their deficiency should be considered in any patient with chronic degenerative diseases. Okay? So what are vitamins? It occurs in more than one chemical form or as precursor. The growth factors are substances required by microorganisms and cells in culture. Minerals are inorganic nutrients needed in small amount by the body. Now, moving on, the earlier the abnormality or the lack of vitamin is diagnosed, is corrected, the more easily, readily, and effectively therapy will work to prevent it. Now, let's proceed to the classification of vitamins. First, we have the water-soluble and the fat-soluble vitamins. The water-soluble vitamins are vitamin B complex and ascorbic acid, whereas the fat-soluble vitamins are what we call the vitamin A, D, E, and K. Now, for the water-soluble vitamins, they are stored to a limited extent. They are called water-soluble, no? Because they can easily be dissolved in water and eventually excreted in the body. They participate, take note, as cofactor for specific enzymes. The activation of these vitamins is by phosphorylation, coupling to purine or pyrimidine nucleotides. Take note of purine or pyrimidine nucleotides. What are they? No, the purine or pyrimidine, take note of that, no? What are the bases and the purine as well as for the pyrimidine. These nucleotides are very important in DNA synthesis, nucleic acid synthesis, no? So for the protein, eventually for protein synthesis, okay? Now, for the fat-soluble vitamins, they are stored to massive degrees. That is why they have the potential for toxicity. They can act like hormones, like vitamin D, and interacts with specific intracellular receptors in target tissues, like the hormones, like the parathyroid hormone, the thyroid hormone. No, they are hormones known as hormones because they have a specific receptors in the cell membrane. Okay. Now the indications. Okay. Indications for giving vitamin is first, deficient intake of vitamins, malabsorption syndromes, increased tissue requirements, inborn errors of metabolism. Now, for the deficient intake of vitamins, like for example, no, in parasitism, no, deficient intake of vitamins, in parasitism, it can cause anemia. Okay, so you need to take your preparation. Malabsorption syndromes, like what? Give examples. Malabsorption syndrome. Okay. Okay. No, malabsorption syndromes, like what? Galactose deficiency, like that. No, there are many of that. Okay. In patient, abnormalities that affect micronutrient processing. What are these micronutrients? Of course, the vitamins. Okay. These are abnormalities of digestion and absorption, like in the stomach, acidity, vitamin B12 needs cleavage from enzyme, no? Before it is absorbed, needs acid for absorption. They need hydrochloric acid from the stomach, no? So that they should be cleaved, and eventually they will be they need an intrinsic factor to be absorbed. Okay, the pancreatic enzymes and bile salts coming from the bile that they are needed for absorption of vitamin, the fat-soluble vitamins, the vitamins added. Okay. Abnormalities of storage, processing, and activation. They develop deficiencies in that require processing and activation in the liver. Okay, like vitamin D from the provitamin D, they are this vitamin D is metabolized in the liver to become 25-hydroxy vitamin D cholecalciferol, which will be go to the blood, then to the kidneys, to become the primary active metabolite of vitamin D, 125-hydroxy dihydroxy cholecalciferol. Same with vitamin A and B6, okay? Because they are metabolized in the liver. Also, for the abnormalities of transport, addict needs chylomicrons for transport. Chylomicrons microns again are part of the bile. Okay. Another one, abnormalities of excretion. In chronic renal insufficiency, there are those which can excretion of vitamins, also in chronic renal insufficiency. Because most drugs, ligands, even vitamins excreted in the kidneys. Patients are at risk for deficiencies of water-soluble vitamins because of renal failure. Okay. Patients with increased requirements, what are they? These are patients who really needs vitamins, like the infants. That's why we give vitamins. Okay, we supplement them with vitamins. Okay, like during the first 4 months of life, we give iron because usually there is hemolysis of blood coming from the mother during the first 3 to 4 months of life. That is why we supplement babies with iron. Okay. Also for the elderly, pregnant women, lactating mothers, alcoholics, cigarette smokers, patients with hemolytic diseases. For those with inborn errors in metabolism due to abnormalities in the structure of the enzyme for which the vitamin provides as cofactor. Remember, most water-soluble vitamins act as cofactors in metabolism, like phenylketonuria, multiple carboxylase deficiency. Okay, they provide as they act as cofactor. Like in phenylketonuria, phenylalanine cannot be metabolized because of the lack of they lack an enzyme, the rate limiting enzyme known as phenylalanine hydroxylase. That is why that's causing phenylketonuria. Okay, so the vitamin requirement, dietary reference index, reference values that are quantitative estimates of nutrient intake includes the following. We have the RDA, that is goes for intake of individual, AI, adequate intake, UL, tolerable upper intake level, and EAR, estimate average requirement of vitamins. Recommended daily allowances describe nutrient requirements in healthy people. Requirements of individual patients may differ due to medical illnesses or or treatments, okay? Like for patients with hemolytic diseases, surgical alterations in GI anatomy. What happened? Usually these patients lack, when they had surgery in gastrointestinal tract, especially the stomach, they will lack. We have to supplement them with vitamin B12, no? Because again, vitamin B12 needs to be cleaved with the help of hydrochloric acid for its absorption. Also, the habits like smoking. Smokers need a higher dose of vitamins as well as genetics. Now, let's proceed to water-soluble vitamin. Vitamin B complex, we have the thiamine, riboflavin, nicotinic acid, pyridoxine, pantothenic acid, biotin, choline, inositol, carnitine, folic acid, and cyanocobalamin, as well as ascorbic acid. Take note, ascorbic acid is a water-soluble vitamin. Manifestations of several vitamin B deficiencies usually can be observed in the same person. B-complex vitamins serve as coenzymes or cofactors in many metabolic pathways that are functionally closely related. Okay. Consequently, a lack of one of the vitamins has the potential to interrupt a chain of chemical processes, including reactions that are dependent on other vitamins and ultimately may produce diverse clinical manifestations. Okay, so this is the history. For the thiamine, it contains a pyrimidine and thiazole nucleus linked by methylene ring, functions as coenzyme thiamine pyrophosphate, which is very important in several metabolic processes. Okay. Physiologic function of thiamine. B1 or vitamin B1 provides the functional group for the coenzyme thiamine pyrophosphate, which is involved in decarboxylation of pyruvic acid and alpha-ketoglutarate acid, and thus is important in the release of energy from carbohydrates. Remember, pyruvic acid and alpha-ketoglutarate acid, where can you see that? First, that is in the metabolism of carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates become glucose from glucose, thus through the anaerobic metabolism, no glycolysis, and the Krebs cycle, no aerobic metabolism, thus producing ATP energy. Okay. Now, thiamine also is required for the synthesis of acetylcholine. What is acetylcholine? It's a neurotransmitter, and deficiency results in impaired nerve conduction. It also participates in the hexose monophosphate shunt that generates nicotinamide, adenine, dinucleotide phosphate, and pentose. Good sources of thiamine include meat, legumes, and cereals. The vitamin is easily destroyed by heat. Okay. Absorption, you just take note of that. Pharmacokinetics, okay. What deficiency of vitamin B1 is called beriberi. We have the wet and dry beriberi. Okay. The child with wet beriberi will look undernourished, pale, and edematous. Dyspneic, but there is vomiting, tachycardia, and waxy skin. Okay, wet beriberi, dry beriberi appears plump, pale, flabby, and listless with dyspnea, tachycardia, and hepatomegaly. Okay. Low red blood cell transcatulase activity is the best indicator of deficiency of thiamine. So when you are in the wards, how will you know if the patient has deficiency of vitamin B1 or thiamine? You request for transcatulase activity, red blood cell transcatulase activity. Okay, clinical response to administration of thiamine is the best test for thiamine deficiency. Okay. Therapeutic uses, treatment of prophylaxis of thiamine deficiency. You have to give vitamin B1 in treatment, alcoholic neuritis, infantile beriberi, subacute necrotizing encephalomyopathy, myelopathy, cardiovascular diseases, gastrointestinal disorders, neuritis of pregnancy, and megaloblastic anemia. Okay, the next vitamin B is riboflavin. Okay, this is the history. What is the function? Of course, again, as coenzyme or cofactor, either it will act as flavin mononucleotide, flavin adenine dinucleotide, and this is also very important in several um, um, metabolic processes in the body. Riboflavin plus ATP will form the flavin monophosphate plus another ATP will result to flavin adenine dinucleotide plus monophosphate, pyrophosphate, okay? That's it. For absorption, just take note of that. We'll proceed with the function. Riboflavin is part of the structure of coenzymes, FAD and FAM, which provide the functional groups for several enzymes for electron transport. Electron transport, remember, occurs in the mitochondria. It has a role in light adaptation and required for conversion of pyridoxine to its vitamer, the pyridoxal phosphate. That is why riboflavin is essential for growth and tissue respiration. It also may play a role again, okay? That is for the, okay? Now, another role is the carboxylation of pyruvic acid and alpha-ketoglutarate acid requires fat, no? Again, in the Krebs cycle, as well as the glycolysis. Fatty acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase requires fat in fatty acid oxidation, the oxidation of fats. No? Reduction of oxidized form of glutathione to reduced form is fat dependent. Fat is required to convert tryptophan to niacin. Take note, tryptophan can be converted to niacin. Tryptophan is what? An essential amino acid. Synthesis of an active form of folic acid is fat dependent also. So what will happen if there is riboflavin deficiency? Usually it's rare. The causes are inadequate intake is the most common cause of deficiency. Faulty absorption may contribute to patients with biliary atresia or hepatitis, those receiving probenecid, phenothiazine, or oral contraceptives. Signs and symptoms of riboflavin deficiency are chylosis, perlicea, masing tablado init dira, chylosis, glossitis, no, inflammation of the tongue, keratitis, no, dryness of the skin, conjunctivitis, inflammation of your conjunctiva, photophobia, lacrimation, marked corneal vascularization, anemia, and seborrheic dermatitis. Okay. Note of the requirements. You can see that you can get this from milk, cheese, organ meats, eggs, green leafy veggies, cereals, and breads. Therapeutic uses for treatment and prevention of deficiency, 5 to 10 milligrams daily in treatment of multiple nutritional deficiency. It's very important for you to take vitamin. Niacin history, okay. The term niacin refers to nicotinamide or niacinamide, nicotinic acid, and derivatives that show the same biologic activity as nicotinamide. Okay? It is important in electron transfer and glycolysis. Absorption, take note of that. Chemistry functions in the body in form of NAD and NAD phosphate. Okay. It has a pharmacological action in the form of nicotinic acid. It can cause flushing, pruritus, GI distress, hepatotoxicity, and activation of your peptic ulcer disease. Physiological functions, coenzyme and oxidation reduction reactions, that is in phase 1 metabolism of the liver, as a substrate in transfer of ADP, ribosyl, moieties to proteins. Functions involved in DNA repair. You see, production of steroid hormones, the adrenal glands, and lipolytic effect. Now, metabolic pathway is, okay, we have here that nicotinic acid plus PRPP. Okay. This way, nicotinic acid plus PRPP will be converted to nicotinic acid ribonucleotide plus a pyrophosphate. Tryptophan can also be converted to a nicotinic acid through the quinolinic. By the way, tryptophan can also be converted to nicotinic acid ribonucleotide through quinolinic acid. Okay, so we have NAR now, nicotinic acid ribonucleotide, coming from nicotinic acid as well as tryptophan. With the addition of ATP, it will become disamido NAD plus pyrophosphate. This amido NAD plus glutamine, which is an amino acid plus ATP, will become NAD plus glutamic acid plus ADP plus phosphate. NAD plus ATP will result to nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate plus adenine dinucleotide phosphate, which is also very, very important in the metabolic processes in the body. Okay. Now, let's proceed. Principal routes of metabolism of nicotinic acid nicotinamide, resulting to formation of N-methyl nicotinamide, which is further metabolized. Symptoms of deficiency, we have the pellagra, which is pellagra is referable to the skin problem, gastrointestinal, and CNS. Okay, skin, GI, and the CNS. So there is a triad of dermatitis, diarrhea, and dementia when you have a patient with dementia, cognitive problem, then there is problem with the gastrointestinal, there is gastrointestinal manifestations plus skin problem, or always prescribe vitamin, especially those with vitamin, nicotinamide, nicotinic acid. With the skin involvement, edema at the back of hands, to other areas exposed to light, photosensitivity, symmetrical involvement, they darken, discommate, and eventually they scar. Now, for GI involvement, stomatitis, enteritis, diarrhea, excessive salivary secretions, steatorrhea, nausea, and vomiting, and CNS symptoms, headache, dizziness, insomnia, depression, impairment of memory, delusions. That is always entertain a possible lack of, this is pellagra, okay? Lack of nicotinamide, okay? Lab findings, macrocytic anemia, hypoalbuminemia, and hyperuricemia, okay? When you encounter this, oh, you give vitamins, okay? Human requirement, take note of that. Food sources, poultry, enriched bread, cereals, nuts, legumes, liver, meat, tryptophan, and from animal protein, milk, and eggs. Therapeutic uses, prophylaxis, and treatment of pellagra. Metabolic disorders are heart valve disease and carcinoid tumors. Okay, let's proceed to vitamin B6. We have pyridoxine. Okay, pyridoxine, okay. Three forms, when we have forms of a vitamin, that is what you call a vitamer. We have the pyridoxine, pyridoxal, and the pyridoxamine. Differs in nature of substituent in carbon atom and actually in their structural formula. Utilized, readily converted to pyridoxal 5-phosphate in the liver. Now, what are the physiological functions? As coenzyme, they are involved in metabolic transformation of acids, like decarboxylation, racemization, transamination, and metabolism of sulfur-containing and hydroxy amino acids, in metabolism of tryptophan, conversion of methionine to cysteine. Okay? Now, interactions with drugs, prolonged use of penicillamine will result to deficiency of vitamin B6. Take note of this, INH antagonist. Okay? That's your assignment. I think we've taken that up in when we took up the antimycobacterials, INH antagonists. Whenever there is an overdose of INH, we give a vitamin B6 in 1:1 proportion. Okay, bicycloserine and hydralazine antagonize vitamin B6, enhance peripheral decarboxylation of levodopa. Okay, so when you have this. You're taking cycloserine and hydralazine, you give you supplement the patient with vitamin B6. Okay. Symptoms of deficiency: skin, seborrhea-like lesions in the eyes, the nose, mouth, bursitis, stomatitis, nervous system seizures, peripheral neuritis associated with carpal synovial swelling, the bone marrow anemia. Okay. Take note of this. The sources, of course, is the meat, the liver, whole grain breads and cereals, soybeans, vegetables. Absorption, pharmacokinetics, take note of that. Therapeutic uses should be a component of therapy for individuals suffering from a deficiency of other members of B complex. Usually, when we see these manifestations, we just don't treat with vitamin like malnutrition. The patient has bursitis, we just don't give the certain vitamin, but it should be a multivitamin, a B complex, okay? Pantothenic acid, okay. What is Pantothenic acid consists of pantoic acid complex to B-alanine, transformed to 4-phosphopantothene, which is incorporated to either coenzyme A or A cell carrier protein in its functional form. What are the physiological functions of pantothenic acid? We have coenzyme A reserves as a cofactor of enzymatic reactions involving the transfer of acetyl groups, which are important in, first, oxidative metabolism of CHO. What is this? Of carbohydrates. Gluconeogenesis, formation of glucose from other sources, the degradation of fatty acids, synthesis of sterols, steroid hormones, and porphyrins. It participates in post-translational modification of proteins, including N-terminal acetylation, acetylation of internal amino acids, fatty acid acetylation. As component of acyl carrier protein, it participates in fatty acid synthesis. Take note of the symptoms of deficiency. It manifests as symptoms of neuromuscular degeneration and adrenocortical deficiency, fatigue, headache, sleep disturbances, nausea, abdominal cramps, flatulence, paresthesias of extremities, muscle cramps, impaired coordination. Okay, that is lack of pantothenic acid. Human requirements, organ meats, beef, egg yolk. Okay, absorption, take note of that, no? Therapeutic use not defined. Okay, biotin. What is biotin? It has three forms found from natural materials aside from free biotin itself. We have the biocytin, the sulfoxides of biotin, sulfoxides of biotin, no? Dextrosulfoxides of biotin, and levosulfoxides of biotin. Efficacy as substitute for biotin in human nutrition is still unknown. Now, what are the physiological functions? Again, as cofactor for enzymatic carboxylation of four substrates, pyruvic acid, again, remember, in your glycolysis, acetyl coenzyme A, of course, Krebs cycle, propionyl coenzyme A, and beta-methyl proteonyl coenzyme A in the fatty acid cycle. No? Metabolism of fats plays a role in carbohydrate and fat metabolism, of course. Carbohydrates, no, pyruvate and acetyl coenzyme A, propionyl beta-methyl proteonyl coenzyme A for fat metabolism. Okay, symptoms of deficiency: dermatitis, atrophic glossitis, hyperesthesia, muscle pain, lassitude, anorexia, anemia, changes in ECG. Take note of the human requirements, food sources, organ meats, egg yolk, milk, fish nuts. Okay, absorption, take note of that. Therapeutic uses: babies with infantile seborrhea, individuals with genetic alterations of biotin-dependent enzymes, patients who receive long-term parenteral therapy. Okay. Now let's proceed to choline, another vitamin B12. Okay, take note of that. Chemistry: choline, trimethylethanolamine. No? Pharmacological actions is same as acetylcholine but less active. Okay, because acetylcholine or acetylcholine. Okay. This same as that of a neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. Okay. Physiological functions: important component of phospholipids. Okay, choline is an important component of phospholipids, which are very important component of the cell membranes. It affects mobilization of fats from the liver. It acts as a methyl donor. You know, methionine is very important in protein synthesis in the different metabolic processes in the body. It is essential for formation of acetylcholine and platelet activating factor, and it is involved in cognition. Okay, cognition, no? Learning, knowledge, cognition. Okay? That is why it is very important for you to eat a lot of choline so that your various cognitive processes won't be impaired. Your cognition won't be impaired to prevent dementia, okay? Now, phospholipid content, it provides essential component of biological membranes and the plasma lipoproteins. component of major phospholipid is lecithin, component of plasmalogens, component of the sphingomyelin. Okay, choline. It also has a lipotropic action, facilitates transport of fat from the liver along with vitamin B12. What is vitamin B12? That is cyanocobalamin, the folic acid, inositol, and methionine. It acts as a methyl donor, donates methyl groups necessary for synthesis of other compounds. Okay, choline transfers of methyl group to homocysteine to form methionine, which is very important in the synthesis, protein synthesis. Okay. Now, acetylcholine formation synthesized from choline and acetyl coenzyme A by choline acetyl transferase, and acetylcholine is a very important neurotransmitter. No, parasympathetic neurotransmitter. Synthesis of platelet aggregating factors formed from a subset of choline, thus containing membrane phospholipids, and they are involved in coagulation. Okay. Symptoms of deficiency of choline reflects multiple defects, fat accumulation in the liver. Okay. Because they are involved in fat mobilization, cirrhosis, increased incidence of hepatocellular CA, hemorrhagic renal lesions, motor incoordination, unidentified in mammals. Okay. Okay, egg yolk, liver, it's very important for you to eat the egg yolk, the liver, the peanuts, mostly as in form of lecithin. So absorption, you take note of that. Therapeutic uses, use of citicoline and choline in large doses are being used in treatment of the nervous system disorders because, again, they play a very important role. No? Choline plays a very important role in cognition. Okay, to proceed, we have inositol. Inositol or hexahydroxycyclohexane, an isomer of glucose. Myo-inositol, nutritionally active stereoisomer. What are the physiological functions? We have first, present in phospholipids of cell membranes and lipoproteins in form of phosphatidyl inositol. No? They are also present in phospholipids like lecithin containing choline. It is inositol are phosphorylated derivatives are released from phospholipids of membranes in response to hormones, autocoids, neurotransmitters. Inositol 1,4,5-phosphate acts as intracellular second messenger by stimulating release of calcium from intracellular stores. Okay. Food sources, fruit, plant sources, whole grain cereals, vegetables, and animal foods. Absorption, you take note of that. Therapeutic uses given in management of diseases associated with disturbances in transport and metabolism of fats, implicates inositol deficiency and pathogenesis of insulin. Okay, take note of this. Study showed that they implicated inositol, lack of inositol in pathogenesis of insulin resistance in polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay. So in polycystic ovarian syndrome, there is what we call insulin. They become insulin resistant because of a possibility of inositol deficiency. Administration improved insulin sensitivity and lowered levels of circulating triglycerides and androgens. Okay, let's proceed to carnitine. Only L-carnitine is synthesized in tissues and possesses biological activity. Its pharmacologic action is administration of D-L-carnitine, which produce a syndrome that resembles myasthenia gravis. Carnitine. No. Physiological functions important in fatty acid oxidation, facilitates aerobic metabolism of carbohydrates. What is aerobic metabolism of carbohydrates? The Krebs cycle. Enhances rate of oxidative phosphorylation and promotes excretion of certain organic acids. Now, the symptoms of deficiency are, we have the primary carnitine deficiency. lipid metabolism are severely affected. A, we have systemic as well as myopathic. For systemic, we have muscle weakness, cardiomyopathy, abnormal hepatic function, impaired formation of ketogenesis, and there is lack of glucose, no hypoglycemia. You have lack of glucose in the blood, as well as myopathic muscle weakness. Okay. Secondary form of carnitine deficiency can result to renal tubular disorders, chronic renal failure due to increased secretion, inborn errors of metabolism, patients receiving total parenteral nutrition, and human requirements from dietary sources and synthesis in liver and kidney. Food sources are meat and dietary products. Okay. So for vegetarians, there is a tendency for them to have this problem, not carnitine deficiency. Okay. Absorption, take note of that. Therapeutic uses, treatment and prevention of primary and secondary carnitine deficiencies, renal disease, cardiomyopathies, and ischemic cardiovascular disease. Okay, so before we, for now, I decided to end my lecture for the vitamins, and then I will just continue next meeting for the vitamin B12 or senacbalamine, folic acid, ascorbic acid, and the ADEC. Okay, so this ends our lecture for tonight. Thank you. God bless.